Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. We are efforting, as they say, Kendell Coffey for our Spinning the Law segment. Actually, we could do the Spinning the Law little theme. We could do it. I know he'll be here. I have confidence. So, you know what? I think if he hears the music, telepathically, wherever he is, he will stop what he's doing and say, "Oh my God, it's Spinning the Law time." So, without any further ado. No, not yet. Okay, let me get a thumbs up. They can't find him in the office? All right, he has a cell phone. If they could, I don't have handy, but we do have that number. Could they give you the cell phone number, please? And we could try that and give them the number to call. And this way we're covered on all bases. All right. We have it? All right. This is it. Now I want everybody to think. Close your eyes and think. Think that this should be heard by Kendell Coffey. This should be heard by Kendell Coffey. This should be heard by Kendell Coffey. Here we go.
You have the right to remain silent, but we'd prefer if you didn't.
Spinning the law, spinning the law.
This is Malzberg's
Spinning the law,
Spinning the Law.
spinning the law, spinning the law.
With attorney Kendell Coffey.
All right, I have all the confidence in the world that will have gotten through to Kendell Coffey. And he will have heard that, as I said, telepathically or however that works. And he will join us. Just a matter of time, my friends. Just a matter of time. One of the things that we're going to talk about with Kendell is a judge is weighing whether or not in Pennsylvania he's being asked to dismiss an assisted suicide charge filed against a nurse in her 93-year-old father's death while he was at a hospice. The woman is accused of giving morphine to her father. He was terminally ill. And defense attorneys call her a loving daughter who only handed him the bottle of morphine at his request. And they argue that there's no evidence even that the morphine killed him. So we have that story. We also have a story, kind of bizarre. A lot of these stories tend to be bizarre. Well, we'll save it because I told you it would work. Kendell, I got to tell you, when they said they didn't know where you were, I played the theme. And I said telepathically, when he hears the Spinning the Law theme, wherever he is, he's going to drop what he's doing and say, "It's Spinning the Law time." And here it worked. It worked.
I was feeling something powerful, and that's got to be it. It's the music. It's the passion.
I know how much you love it, so therefore we played it for you, and there you are. Well, I'm glad you made the time for us, as always. Thank you very much. All right, let's start. I just brought up, before we get to the Supreme Court and all that, since I just brought up the case of this Pennsylvania woman, a judge. I don't know if he's acted yet or not today, but he's being asked to dismiss a woman charged with assisted suicide. She's a nurse. Her 93-year-old father was in a hospice. She handed him a bottle of morphine at his request, she says. Her lawyers say there's no evidence that the morphine even killed him. But he died in the hospital 4 days later after a hospice nurse who stopped by called 911 despite a do not resuscitate order. So this is he was terminally ill. This is, a touchy subject.
Well, it is, and it hits all of us emotionally. My father's 92. Thankfully, he's still alive, but so many of us, Steve, face these really difficult decisions. And what the law says as of now, and virtually all states, is that there may be a moral justification, but legally speaking, assisted suicide is still a crime in most places. Now, you would think that the authorities would use a lot of discretion and decide, my heavens, is this a criminal or is this a loving daughter?
Right, yeah, and decide, because they have prosecutorial discretion as onto what to take up and what not to prosecute, correct?
Absolutely, and it's just strikes you that in these circumstances where there are some real questions about causation and things of the like, and obviously there was no kind of criminal intent even remotely in this scenario. It seems like a situation where families should be left alone and tragedies respected and not punished.
Yeah, we should point out that a lower court judge approved the charges because a police captain testified that the woman had originally said her father wanted to die and she gave him the morphine. Assisted suicide in Pennsylvania is a felony punishable by up to 10 years in prison. All right, now let's move on. We'll save the Supreme Court for last. Let's move on to another story that this one's kind of, I don't know. You tell me. A state appeals court yesterday tossed out child abuse findings against a frustrated Northern California mother who spanked her 12-year-old daughter hard enough with a wooden spoon to cause bruising. And you know what this reminds me of right off the bat? I don't know if you saw the press conference. The 9-year-old who managed to stow away on a plane, get through the security gate and take a plane somewhere the other day. The father did a press conference. He was all hidden with a hoodie and had his face covered. And he was practically crying, saying, I asked for help for the authorities. They say there's nothing they could do. And then I asked the cop if I beat my son's butt for doing this. He says, we'll arrest you for child abuse. So he says, and he started crying almost. Somebody's got to help me. I need help with this kid. But that aside, the 6th District Court of Appeals in San Jose reversed the child abuse determination, which was made by a lower court. Social workers wanted to report this guy to the State Department of Justice and keep him in a database, but the appeals court tossed this out.
Well, it's, when you ask somebody in Florida about that, all we can think of is the many times the social workers fail to see the real instances of child abuse. And time again, we read about, literally deaths of children because the social workers claim they've got too many things to be doing and to keep track of. I mean, my heavens, wooden spoon. I don't know what the extent of bruising was, but it doesn't look like anything in this suggests the acts of a criminal. The social workers have caseloads. They've got a lot of people who really, really need their help. Is this the kind of thing that needs to be in the courts, Steve?
No, absolutely not. And the same thing has happened in New York and in New Jersey. And I could only imagine, and this is not a defense, because whatever happened to good old-fashioned spanking? I mean, that's basic. It's practically outlawed. I know parents are afraid to spank their kids legitimately. And by the way, the judge in this case said that nothing in the record suggests the mother should have known she was inflicting bruises, saying that the spanking was entirely the product of a genuine and deliberate disciplinary purpose, which I guess means that, at least in his view, you can discipline your kids by spanking them. But I guess these social workers, and again, it's not a defense, get so many cases, and they're so afraid of liability or whatever that what if this kid, I don't know, it turned out that he was subsequently or she was subsequently beaten and then they didn't catch it the first time and there was a record of it, then they'd be in trouble. I think we give the social workers maybe sometimes too much leeway, and there should be criteria, and paddling someone or spanking someone shouldn't be the criteria where a social worker gets involved.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to outlaw spanking. I wish they would have done it decades ago. It would have done me some good. But and you're right, because they're in a difficult position. If they fail to report bruising, and then 3 months later it turns out that the bruisers were a sign of something more serious, then of course it's all the more blameworthy. The question here is, where's the judgment? I mean, let's not blame the social worker, but at some point somebody in the supervisory chain or in the system decided that apparently a relatively nonviolent disciplinary event was turned into some form of a crime or serious wrongdoing. That's where the gap is, and it's going to keep happening because all the social workers that overreport and overreact are going to be told many times about the folks that drop the ball and don't bring troubling signs to the symptoms of the authority. This is one where I think the mistake is not the original report. They just took it too far, and this is one where a California court has done something that I agree with.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. We're talking to Kendell Coffey here on the Spinning the Law segment. Of course, he has the book out by that same name, which talks about so many of the high-profile great cases he's been involved in. I highly recommend it. The case of Aaron Hernandez, the former New England Patriots tight end, and I never thought I'd talk about this case, but it's interesting. There was supposed to be just a boring old routine court hearing yesterday to discuss pending motions, but the prosecutors now filed a motion to have the judge handling the case replaced, citing her handling of a 2010 murder trial as the reason for her to step aside, and the defense doesn't like this.
Well, it's extraordinary for prosecutors to seek to disqualify a judge. Those kind of motions happen all the time from by defense lawyers who feel they have to cover themselves and file a lot of different motions or else be accused of ineffective assistance of counsel. So ordinarily, just looking at the allegations, I would say, well, if some prosecutor had a difficult time with a judge 3 years ago, that's generally not good enough. But it's hard to think that there wasn't a serious concern. So I'm not going to make a prediction on this one, and just sort of note that it's very rare for prosecutors to make these kind of motions. And just because of that reality, it's something that has to be taken seriously.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's move on to the Supreme Court. They're going to have a lot of high-profile cases, and one of them they heard arguments on, and that was the Alabama businessman who's challenging federal caps on political contributions. He basically said that if I, give X amount of money to a bunch of congressional candidates in my state, and then I reach the limit, but I still want to give a contribution to a guy in another state running for a different office, I'm not allowed to. So he's arguing for the caps to go away. And by what they had to say, at least the conservative justices on the court did show sympathy, while the liberal justices were a little harder.
Well, I think conservatives as well as liberals would acknowledge that this is free speech. I mean, your ability to advocate your views in the political world is about as fundamental a thing as our founding fathers were focused on. And so this is the heart of what First Amendment free speech is about. And whether you're getting your message out by standing on a street corner with a sign and yelling, or you're doing it by funding candidates and causes you believe in, it's pretty clearly free speech. So the question is, what are the justifications for limiting free speech? And as you know, you've got to have a really, really strong one to limit something that's constitutionally protected. So the issue in a case like this is, okay, if you maintain the cap of $123,200 over a 2-year cycle, so that's all you can personally contribute. This doesn't deal with a lot of other campaign finance issues, but that's all you can personally contribute over the 2 years. What is the justification for that? And is there a case, is there a record that says, oh, well, if we keep that cap in place, we are going to reduce corruption in politics? And, they just don't seem to have a lot of evidence to point out that it'll have any such impact. And consider a couple other things. In the last election cycle, there were allegations that, there were super billionaires that were putting a lot of their own money into the election, and yet both sides seem to have plenty of money. It's really hard to say that a handful of very wealthy people have hijacked the system when you look at all the ability the candidates now have to raise money from whatever sources. So I think the allegation that this is somehow protecting us from corruption or protecting the system from the few controlling everything and effectively disenfranchise those who are not wealthy, those kind of justifications just don't seem to be very compelling at this point.
Right, and this is, of course, the Citizens United decision back in 2010, which the president blasted just the other day, affected the amount of money corporations and unions spend on elections. This is about individuals. Let's briefly just skim over. I mean, this is a very busy session. There's a lot of controversial social issues that are coming up. In addition to this one, we have bans on college affirmative action, housing claims that allege unfair impact based on race. We have abortion issues coming before the court, and religious freedom as it applies in the Obamacare or Affordable Care Act. So there's a lot that I guess between now and June that they're going to have to decide on.
Yeah, it could be a momentous session because a number of issues have been teed up where what seems to be, for most purposes, a 5-member majority of the Supreme Court can make some decisions that some would say are conservative issues on social issues. And at the same time, they seem to sort of follow the script that the Chief Justice advocates, which is moving the law in small steps or incrementally. not just throwing out in a single stroke years of precedent so much as moving things gradually and thoughtfully. So I would be expecting that this term you're going to see some movement, not, shocking day and night movement, but perhaps some steady steps in a direction that some would say is more conservative with respect to key social issues.
And we shall see. Of course, God forbid anybody on the court decides to leave or has to leave. Then, I say God forbid, then Barack Obama would get yet another appointee, and that could tilt depending on who that person might be. Kendell, always a pleasure, sir, and always an honor. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, keep playing that theme music.
All right, can we do we have it to play now? Yeah, okay. Let's play it going out here for Kendell, so we can hear it for real. Take care, Kendell Coffey, ladies and gentlemen, spinning the law on the Steve Malzberg Show.
You have the right to remain silent, but we'd prefer if you didn't.
Spinning the law, spinning the law.
This is Malzberg's
Spinning the law.
Spinning the Law
Spinning the law, spinning the law.
with attorney Kendell Coffey.